smile first.
Hey, we're back again. I'm Dr. Carolyn George from Vita Integrative Medicine, and I have with me Leslie Harrington,
Hey guys.
health coach extraordinaire. And tonight we are going to be talking about why you might not be able to lose weight, even though you're doing everything you can think of.
Yes.
So first off, if we can have a show of hands or thumbs up, who all has had some difficulty losing weight? Is there anybody out there that has tried to lose weight and just not getting there?
Give us a little high five. We've got lots of opportunity for questions tonight too, guys. So we have a lot of information to share, but we also want to really try to interact a little bit and answer questions that are really, specific to you. So, hey, Ann.
So we're getting some hands up. There's some people there that have had some difficulty with weight loss. So people are traditionally told from their primary care doctors, from our culture, that it's calories in equals calories out. All you need to do is eat less, exercise more, and you're going to drop the weight. But we all know that this does not help everybody. It does a lot of people, but not everybody. So what things have people tried? So give us some ideas there of things that you might have tried that didn't work, or things that you have heard that are kind of crazy that you're wondering if there's any validity to them, and we'll see what myths we can bust tonight. So one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was calorie restriction. Okay, so the first thing everybody is told is cut those calories, go down to your 1,200, your 800 calorie diet with those HCG diets, and see what you can do to lose weight. So first off, that's not healthy, okay? You really need to eat in order to lose weight. If you go too low on the calorie count, then you're shutting down your metabolism. Now that doesn't mean you eat 3,000 calories, but you've got to find that middle ground, having enough to sustain you and to tell your body that you're safe, that food is coming. It does not have to slow down the metabolism so that you can live, because your body's first prime directive is survival, right? So if you don't give it enough food, it is going to go, okay, what do I need to do? I'm going to shut down all these operating systems so that we can survive.
Yeah, I think the big thing too with today's society is we have so many things that need to shift in thinking. And that's why we call this Mythbusters, because historically we're taught exercise more, eat less. And that's kind of been the way that the weight loss community has been raised to believe that things work. And technically, metabolically, that's not really a true factor. I mean, calories are something that are they're a measurement of energy, really. That's all they are. But it's a real thing, but it's not something that, if you're solely focused on calories and calorie counting and not the quality of the food you put in, and a good example is like 100 calories of broccoli is not the same as a 100 calorie diet soda or Coke, regular soda. It's what the calories are doing and the type of food you're putting in your body that's actually telling your metabolism how to react. And so getting away from that mindset of calorie counting is one of the most critical things, I think, for people to take away from today, and not thinking that it's equivalent to do a certain amount of exercise to burn a certain amount of calories, because you don't really know how much what your metabolism is doing and actually how it's using that energy. And some of the things we're going to talk about tonight is going to tell you why that energy might not be simply extracting what you're getting from your food and just, calories in, calories out. That model is just not the same as what it was preached to us most of our lives.
Right. We are not machines. That works really well in a calorimeter, but not so much in a human body. So that was number one that we wanted to make sure that we got out there. The other thing, when you are doing all that calorie counting or cutting your calories, is you start to feel deprived. You feel like you're losing out, and that's not a positive emotion. That tends to make people feel more depressed. So that doesn't kind of go towards a positive, healthy lifestyle when you're just feeling like you're always depriving yourself of things.
Yeah, and so Brian asks, does eating less calories may help you lose weight, but doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy? It may or may not help you lose weight. It depends on what's happening in your body and what's going on. I see a lot of people that tend to eat too little, and that's actually causing them to gain weight, because for many different reasons, and some of what Dr. George was talking about earlier, as far as what your body thinks is going on. It's trained, and it knows when to store and when to exert energy. And so, having a certain amount of calories just to function is necessary. So eating less than that might be disadvantageous to your body. And then on the flip side, if you're eating a certain number of calories and you want to have a certain deficit, if you know approximately your output, it might make sense. It's just we have to shift that thinking from calories to more quality of food and what you're working towards with food. And the other thing is what's happening when you're cutting calories is you're losing the nutrients. So most people are cutting calories, and they're cutting not just calories, they're cutting maybe the wrong calories, and they're causing nutrient deficiencies. And then they're also really putting their lean muscle mass at risk.
Right.
So, you're not just potentially losing weight, you're losing the wrong type of weight. You want your body to burn fat, and you want to lose fat. You don't want to lose muscle. You don't want to just lose weight. You want to lose the right type of body fat.
Right. So you have the three major compartments that you can lose weight from when you're going on a diet. You can lose water. That's often the first weight that you lose. You can lose fat, which is what everybody's trying to lose. But much more commonly, you lose muscle. And so if you really drop that dietary intake so much, or you're taking foods where you're not getting enough of your proteins or the good fats, then you will burn your muscle and not your fat. And so you want to ideally have somebody that's got a machine that can measure that before and after, and make sure that you're losing not the water weight, not the muscle weight, but the fat weight. Yeah. And then readjust what you're doing if you're not losing the right body compartment.
And there's a lot of really great strategies, and I think when we touch on some of the other topics, you'll understand some more strategic fat loss type of ways of eating. And then looking at what the calorie restriction, another point I just want to touch on, the stress that it puts on your body.
Yes.
Like it can really put your body in a place where when you're eating balanced and you have enough energy, not just for energy output, but energy where your body doesn't feel stressed out about it, then you're not going to be as hungry, you're not going to see blood sugar spikes, you're not going to see as much rhythm in your day-to-day ups and downs with energy. So having that more consistency is going to keep you where your body's not so stressed.
Yeah, you got it. Hi, Marianne. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Ellen. Hi, Marianne.
So a couple of other things that we wanted to touch base on. So when you do decrease the foods that you're eating, so you're decreasing the quantity, where you really want to try to cut it is more of those simple carbs. Maintain the good healthy proteins, maintain the healthy fats, not your trans fats, not the less desirable fats, but your avocado, your nuts, your seeds, your lean meats, ideally grass-fed, hormone-free. So making sure that your body still is able to build muscle, because presumably you're out there working out at the same time, because you want to create that match so that you're decreasing what you eat, but increasing the use so that you're starting to burn that fat. Okay, so just making sure that you're getting those key proteins and carbs and plenty of fiber, because that fiber is really useful for feeding the bacteria that we're going to talk about in a minute, because our microbiome is one of our best friends when it comes to losing weight and just living in general. The microbiome is our buddies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think paying attention, sometimes people have a hard time when you're eating the right foods. It's really hard to eat too many calories, right? You actually have to kind of be consciously aware of what you're doing. So adding in the healthy fats and maybe some additional, the MCT oils. Some people just don't have a lot big meals and things like that. So the vegetables, those types of things, it just increasing kind of more of the good things that you might already be doing is going to help you get to that next place and make your body more efficient.
Yeah. Now, and by the way, I mentioned microbiome, and not everybody might be familiar with that term. So that's just the bacteria that live in your gut. And you have billions of them. We all have billions of them. In fact, there's more of their DNA in our body than there is our DNA. So there's some people who question who's driving the bus. But there's some really interesting studies looking at the bacteria in people's guts and their weight. And so some of the most interesting are ones that look at humans and mice. So we can't do all of these studies all on humans, but there's been some interesting combinations of human and mice studies where the humans, say there's twins, one who is overweight, one who is thin, and their stool was put in mice, okay, who was then fed, the mice were fed the exact same diet. The mice are essentially clones of each other, so they're really the same. They're fed the same diet, they're exercised the same way, but the mouse that had the stool from the more obese twin gained weight, and the mouse that had the stool from the thin twin did not. And similarly, when you do mice studies and transfer it back and forth, if you have stool from an obese person and put it in a fat mouse, that mouse gains weight, starts to develop hypertension and all the things that go along with the weight gain. And if you transfer stool from a thin mouse to that fat mouse then starts to lose weight. So there's a lot of this transferring back and forth that's going on in a lot of labs around the country, and we're really seeing that it makes a difference. And even doing other studies between people who have had something called C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, which is a bacterial infection that causes nasty diarrhea. And people that are given stools from people that were thin or were overweight were then ended up doing just what that stool, what that person who donated that stool did. So if they got stool from a thin person, they started to lose weight. If they got stool from a fatter person, a more obese person, they would gain weight.
Yeah.
And so there's something going on with those bacteria that we think are helping or hindering the digestion of the food and either extracting the most energy from the food, or in the ones in the thin mouse, not extracting all the energy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if you go, it's fecal implant is what it's called. So if you're interested in more, there's a lot of studies online, and it's really interesting what they're finding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very cool. So feed your bacteria, okay? And there's tests that you can do to kind of look at the balance that you've got. But the key thing is feeding those bacteria, they like fiber. So fiber are your vegetables, your nuts, your seeds. So make sure you're getting plenty of that, at least 40 grams of fiber in your diet, and that will help you to feed those good guys. It also helps to make you feel full, so you're not eating the simple carbs that are going to put those pounds on. So it's a double benefit.
Actually, and when we touch on some of the hormone balancing pieces later, you'll see that the fiber is critical for escorting estrogen through your body and kind of moving that out too. So fiber kind of like encompasses probably most all of our topics.
That's why I tell people fiber is your friend. You have no idea what good things fiber does. Like she says, it escorts estrogens and other hormones out. It escorts cholesterol out. So if you have high cholesterol, it will bring it out. Fiber does a lot of amazing things in a body, so really try to make sure you're getting a good dose of fiber every day.
Before we hop to topics off of calories, I want to just go, because I get a lot of questions about intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, and intermittent fasting is kind of something you're hearing a lot more about. There's a lot of studies going on with it right now. It's different than fasting. It's different. People sometimes have a misunderstanding because there's several different ways that you can do intermittent fasting, and there's different windows that you can create for yourself. I think the key important, just to kind of keep it high level and within the idea of calorie restriction, is that when you are doing intermittent fasting, you're dealing with a shorter window of actual when your mealtime, right? So you're dealing with an 8-hour window when you're ingesting food, and that sometimes it's really hard to get enough calories in that 8-hour window. So that's where you want to really maximize the combinations of your food. You've got the healthy fats, you've got your lean proteins, you've got your vegetables, maximizing those vegetables, and just making sure that you're getting in enough, because a lot of people are doing this intermittent fasting and then they're not only are they eating in that shrunken window, eventually they're not eating enough, and then it will ultimately defeat you. And intermittent fasting is very intimate to the person. It's very critical to know what your hormones are doing, because some people can find, if you have adrenal issues and things like that, intermittent fasting isn't always the best solution. So really, before you go on something like that, I would have a good understanding of what your body and if it's the right diet for you.
Right, exactly. And somebody asks, how often should you eat in order for the fiber and other nutrients to do their job? Well, generally 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Rather than 5 or 6 times a day. I know a lot of people have kind of been on this thing of trying to eat frequently, and it might be necessary for a few people, but by and large it really isn't. You should be able to sit down and have a meal and finish it. There's a lot of important things that go on in your intestines in between meals that help it to cleanse itself and refurbish, and digestion is a very energy intense thing that we do. And so 3 meals a day is kind of generally speaking ideal, unless you're doing the intermittent fasting, and then you're generally doing 2 meals, and that, like Leslie said, about 8 hours apart.
Yeah, so this actually is kind of stepping into our next topic, which if we're going from the
Sure.
insulin resistance. Okay, so one of the myths that you hear a lot is about eating 6 times a day, and I think we've been kind of trained to think that we have to eat more frequently and more often to keep our blood sugar stable and things like that. And really that has to do with what you're eating and the quality and the combination of foods. So like Dr. George was saying, when you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner and you're combining the right foods, your energy should be perfectly fine throughout a 4-hour period for you to not eat. We got to a place where we're constantly eating. If you think about like Paleolithic times or our ancestors, they're on out hunting, hanging out. Oh wait, snack time, whipping out their peanut butter. Like it's something that we adapted as a culture, and it's not, I think like there's a time and a place, in terms of depending on the person, but understanding that it is a myth. It's not something that has to be done to be eating 6 times a day. And the other thing is the carbs, when's the time of day to eat carbs? So, in the morning, people think if I eat carbs, in the standard American diet kind of dictates that. So you've got your bagels and your basically your dessert for breakfast.
French toast, your bagels,
your Cocoa Puffs.
All those kinds of things.
And the thing is, people's mindset is, I'm eating a lot of carbs, so I'll burn them all day. And that's actually the flip side. So if you were to be strategically looking to burn fat, waking up in the morning, your insulin is very sensitive. So if you're eating a high sugar or high carb breakfast, you're going to have an overreaction from your insulin, which is going to keep it in your bloodstream longer, which is going to keep you in fat storage longer. So the less you have to, the later in the day when you're eating carbs, your insulin's not going to be as sensitive, and you're not going to have that same response by your body. So it's actually better to kind of flip that around.
The thing to understand about insulin is that it's a message that you've got a feast going on. If you have high insulin, that means you've got a lot of sugar, you've got a lot of food, and speaking evolutionary-wise, the mandate is always to survive. So if you've got a lot of food going around, your body has been kind of primed to be able to store that to last through the winter or whatever the next famine is coming up. So anytime you're seeing high insulins, your body is always going to store your fat. Okay, insulin is just saying, let's store it, let's save it, right? So anything that you can do to keep your insulin lower, okay, is going to be helpful. So trying to match, if you're having any carbs, having that with some protein, having that with some good fat, so that you don't get these big spikes. Because if you eat your bagel, you're spiking that sugar right up, which spikes your insulin right up. But if you have something, obviously not as
protein dense,
as carb dense as a bagel, but you might have like a little cracker or something with some protein, with some nut butters, with some meat, with something else that's more protein and fat, then you're going to get a slower rise. So you're still going to digest it, but that insulin's got a slower rise, and so you're not getting that blast of insulin.
And you're going to be able to be satiated for longer too. You're not going to get that super drop right after.
Right, because you spike it and then you drop it. But if you can do that slow rise, then you'll last your 3 or 4 hours till your next meal, and you're going to feel energetic the whole time.
So Kristen says, testing my blood sugar has been a huge eye-opener to see what foods impact. And that's critical. I think some people don't realize their access to have, that the meter and do some self-testing. And I encourage people to do self-testing, because sometimes you might think that, oh, it's just this, my body won't burn. And then you're like blowing it out the water and you're like, whoa, that was like a really big, what my body would have considered a high-carb meal, So blood sugar testing, definitely something everybody could do, and I'm sure we're going to do probably a whole topic on that one
probably,
too.
Yes, exactly.
But going back to the insulin and the insulin being a fat storage hormone, it's that frequency too. If you're eating 6 times a day and you're getting this S curve every time you're insulin, whereas if you picture you're eating 3, all the time in between, your body's allowed to tap into stored energy and fat. So the more often your insulin's present in your bloodstream, the more often that you're storing fat.
So moving along, then the next topic is sleep. If you want to lose weight, you need to sleep.
Sleep yourself skinny.
Sleep yourself skinny, exactly, I like that.
This is so underestimated. It's
right.
obscene.
Sleep is huge in terms of weight loss. Some of the biggest studies, most interesting studies looking at sleep show that it has impacts across the spectrum, from cancer to hypertension to heart disease and obesity. So when you're sleeping, that's when your body's repairing. So you go out, you do this great workout. Well, when are you going to repair that muscle? when you sleep, right? It doesn't repair when you're walking around. The sleep time is when your brain repairs and your body repairs.
Human growth hormone.
All that human growth hormone exactly goes up when you're sleeping, and so you really want to make sure that you're getting a good 7 or 8 hours of sleep, if not more. Sometimes you need more.
Yeah, and even, there's the brain system, the glymphatic system.
Yeah.
So the brain's actually cleaning itself at night as well, and you're taking memories from your day, and they're becoming permanent.
Long term.
So it's really, there's a lot of things that are going on when you're asleep that's very restorative for your body. And I get a lot, so do you really need to have 6 to 8 hours? And I think the question isn't so much,
I got too much to do, I don't have time to sleep.
Yeah, right. There's really the biggest thing is the quality. So if their sleeps are in cycles, right? 60 to 90 minutes, and you have light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep, and we need a certain percentage of all of that. And if you're in a place where you're only getting one type of sleep, or you're only doing light sleep and stuff, there's still going to be a deprivation there, and that is going to work against your body when it comes to fat loss. When you don't get that sleep, you're going to be decreasing your levels of leptin, which is basically your body's hormone that tells you you're full. So I don't know if you've ever noticed on the night when you have a bad night's sleep, the next day you wake up and you're like starving and you want to eat every carb in the book.
Right.
And that's actually a direct result of the insulin resistance that lack of sleep causes, as well as that hormone is kind of like not functioning the way it should. So it's going to be telling you that you're hungry when you may or may not actually need fuel for your body.
The other thing is that repetitive nights of poor sleep can be stressful. And they've studied the stress response, and stress response increases ghrelin, and ghrelin is telling you that you're hungry. So that's one of the other hormones that we've got, ghrelin and leptin, that are kind of dictating our appetite. And so it's going to really make you want that food if you're stressed for any reason, but particularly when you're not sleeping.
Yeah, and then back to that estrogen conversation, estrogen dominance, poor sleep can actually increase estrogen dominance, and that is not good in any situation, so that will in fact result in waking.
Right. Estrogen, again, thinking about evolutionary adaptations, but estrogen is all about having fertility and increasing the ability to pass your genes on, and so that estrogen is going to help you gain weight so that you can support another life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So what else do we want to talk about?
We are on to stress, the best topic. Let's go with the myth buster, right? The societal badge of honor.
Yes. So a lot of people think, okay, I am a go-getter, I'm powerful, I'm, all of that. So I don't need to sleep. I need to be working 16, 18 hours a day. And I've got too much to do to be able to sleep. And they wear it kind of like a badge of honor, that they're better than kind of other people who need to sleep, who are kind of weak. So that is not, we don't think of that as a badge of honor. We think of that as just being kind of
not so sharp.
Not so sharp, yeah. I was trying to think of a nice way to say that. But don't think that lack of sleep is really something to be desired. You need sleep. We don't totally understand why you need sleep. Scientists still don't have a complete understanding of why we have REM sleep and non-REM sleep. But we do know that when you don't sleep, you do gain weight, you start to lose your memory, and everything goes haywire, yes.
Yeah, but back in stress, the thing with stress, and it's kind of like in corporate America, that whole visibility thing. If you're there 12 hours a day, it appears better and things, but there are also some of the greatest leaders and the greatest people have these routines where they're actually prioritizing sleep. It's getting a lot, sleep and stress management is getting a lot more attention. Meditation's becoming prominent in some of the corporate world, and more wellness type programs and things like that. So that whole wearing stress, like the more stressed you are, the more impressive you are, the more successful you are, it's actually going to catch up. And it will, over a period of time, it will cause you to not just gain weight, but increase in the cortisol and going into all of the different things that are going to result from it at the end of the day. That could be very well a reason that you might be weight loss resistant.
Yeah.
So cutting back on caffeine, there's a lot of correlation with cortisol and the caffeine drinking. That's one way to kind of like back it off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And then I guess let's talk to stress about when you're dealing with food. I have a lot of people that will be like contemplating, like a carrot in their salad because it's like a higher sugar vegetable. And I'm like really pick your battles with what you're going to stress over, because the stress is going to outweigh the benefit of you making the right food choice. And when you're worried so much about being so perfect, that you're really going to take away any type of benefit of making that good choice if it took you an hour and a half of resisting the cookie to make the choice. You'd have been better off, having the cookie and then, getting over it and moving onward.
And if you're going to have the cookie, because nobody's perfect and we all do that, then slow it down and eat it really mindfully. And then sometimes half the cookie is enough, or sometimes you're still going to have the whole cookie, but you will have enjoyed it. The thing you don't want to do if you're trying to lose weight and you cannot avoid that beautiful cup of ice cream or the cookie or whatever it is that's calling your name, eat it and really enjoy it so that you've eaten it. Don't scarf it down without thinking about it, because then you're just going to want another one. So really sit there and just percolate.
Make it intentional.
Make it intentional and really
and then be
enjoy
done.
the taste.
Then onward. It's feeling guilty or contemplating before and or after. It's a waste of everybody's time, and it's a use of your body's energy that just doesn't need to be put in that direction.
Exactly. The other thing to think about, a lot of people wonder why, and this is kind of jumping topics, but it's on stress. They wonder why they get so much belly fat. Why is the rest of me not gaining weight? It seems to all be coming around my belly. So one of the things that we see is that people that are in these high stress positions or under stress for a variety of reasons tend to put on belly fat. And that is not fully understood why, but it's a common thing that we see. And we think it's because it really is kind of pushing your body's production of adrenaline and then over time your cortisol. And so cortisol preferentially kind of does the visceral adipose tissue, that belly fat. And so looking at your stress management techniques actually can help you lose weight. And we've got some patients who do that, who are just really discovering that. And we're really enjoying seeing them discover the fact that they can relax and do fun things, and the weight just melts off them, as they say.
Yeah, and I think we have so many people that are already on somewhat of a really structured diet, right? Because of whatever things that they're in for, they're working on other health things, and their goals are much more to do with wellness and not just simply weight loss. So they're already kind of doing the food right. So a lot of the other components that we're talking about here are what's influencing some of the weight loss and kind of getting a body to really finally start to have that response beyond food.
Right. And that's kind of the way I try to think of it is, if your body's in a fight or flight, if you're in survival mode, if you're stressed most of the day, your body is going to do whatever it needs to give you the energy that you need to fight that fight, run away from that boss that's chasing you or whatever is going on. So you're going to always hold on to your weight until you're no longer in that vigilant, stressed mode. So you really chronically. It's fine to be there short term. We all need that. Every day we can be in the fight or flight mode. That's when we get things done. Eustress, that's the term for having good stress, is good for us. But when we're constantly functioning, operating there all day long, and then at 11 o'clock at night we decide that we want to crash and it's time for bed, or 12 o'clock, and then you just think you're going to go from going 100 miles an hour to 0 and jump into bed, and then get back up at 5:30 in the morning to do the same thing over again. That is where you run into the weight issues often. Not always, but often. And so figuring out ways to help calm yourself, to get into what we call the rest and digest and heal phase, and that can be meditation, that can be walking, that can be painting, that could actually even be rock climbing, because rock climbing and anything where you're really focused in the moment is really a form of meditation. And your heart rate variability changes during that time. There's all kinds of physiologic changes that happen when you're in those meditative moments.
Awesome, yeah, and anything, not to get too crazy into the meditation concept, but just remember meditation can be in many different forms, and it's really about being present and mindful of what's happening in the moment. So it's not that you have to be, we could be sitting here right now and talking about, oh, my stomach feels like that. Like, you're engaged in what you're feeling in your body. So that could mean a lot of things for different people. But since we're talking about, go back to the gut and the bacteria piece, I mean, that was our fifth thing, was really, a lot of people come in with, and they have their gut health is just kind of a mess, and it's not always evident until you kind of figure that out. But talking about the different bacteria and what's happening in that bacterial balance has a huge impact on the body's ability to release weight and having that resistance issue. But leaky gut, hormone balancing, all the different dynamics of what we're seeing.
Digestion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having a good look at how your gut's digesting, absorbing, assimilating the food, and then getting rid of your waste.
Definitely. So I think some of the reasons that we're trying everything, your body's also changing. You have to remember, people have been doing things the same way for so many years, and it's always worked for them, and then all of a sudden they hit whatever age, I'll say 40, just for common sake, but then they're going all of a sudden, oh, but I've always been doing this workout, and I've always been eating these foods, and suddenly nothing's working, and I'm putting on weight, and I don't know why. And you have to remember, as you progress through life, your hormone balance is changing, and sometimes you need to adapt by changing up your exercise, changing up some of the foods you might be eating. You might need a little more sleep. You might need to be nurturing yourself differently because your body doesn't have as much stress resilience as you might have had, 5-10 years ago, or you might have had less responsibility or whatever it is. But just recognize that as you evolve, what you did 10 years ago is not going to be effective for what you're doing today. You've got to understand that your paradigm has to shift.
Right, absolutely. And as Robin mentions, eating itself can be a meditation, and that's what I was saying, if you're going to have that bowl of chocolate ice cream or whatever, but it can be on good food too, so healthy food. But you can sit down and really kind of smell it, feel the texture of it, really enjoy the flavor of it on your teeth and swallowing. And you can have a whole mindful experience with anything that you eat. And that's actually really brings the flavors out. You really enjoy it a lot more.
It's very powerful too.
Yeah, very powerful.
It's also taking something that you're introducing the food into your DNA, and it's becoming part of your cellular structure. It's not like the food is digesting and then it's being absorbed into your body. It's becoming you.
It's becoming your new cells.
Yeah.
So if you're eating awesome healthy food that develops into awesome healthy cells, if you're eating junky food, well, then you can kind of see what kind of cells you might get. But the cellular health really becomes then reflective of your whole body health. So it starts at the cell, which starts at your food.
Yes.
So with that, we should probably tie things up because we're now just a little bit over 8 o'clock.
I would love if anyone has any questions they want to shoot out, definitely go for it. If you're watching this in the replay, you can do that as well, because we'll come back and answer them after. I think I had a couple things to remember was just patience, understanding that it takes a long time to establish behaviors to kind of get to where you are today. And if that's not exactly where you want to be from a weight standpoint, just being patient with getting your body and your behaviors to kind of adapt in the other direction. That's not going to happen overnight. Right. And your body will take some time, but when it does shift and really recognize that it's starting to utilize more fat for fuel and less sugar for fuel, it's gonna be pretty profound once it kicks in gear. So
yeah, absolutely, patience is absolutely key. So I think that is that everything?
Donate your scale.
Oh,
yeah.
So don't worry about what your actual number weight is. Worry about how you feel, how the clothes feel on you. Don't be one of those people that every morning wakes up and weighs yourself, okay? That just creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So just kind of look at how you're feeling strong, are you feeling vibrant, are you feeling good and healthy? That's the key thing to really want to think about rather than what your exact weight is.
So we have a couple questions. So in regards to the scale, one of the tests that we do here measures the different muscle mass to fat mass. Right. So you could literally be the same weight on the scale and your muscle mass can be shifting and your clothes are fitting different, your body weight's redistributing, and you're a much healthier version of you and not one thing changed on that scale. Right. So really just remember its perspective. Should you do intermittent fasting every day? That's actually very particular and individual. Individualized nutrition in general, these days you're going to hear a lot more about that because the cookie cutter styles don't work for everybody anymore. But it can be that you do it on different levels, depending on...
Right. So some people will do it 2 or 3 days a week. Some people will do one day, 24 hours where they fast.
Full fast,
So there's different ways to do it. You can experiment, talk with your doctor or your nutritionist and see, but kind of finding what works best for you, because like Leslie said, there's not one way that works for everybody, and it's really not studied fully yet to know exactly what's going to be the best way.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to change things too. So it might work for you for a little while, and you might kind of feel like you hit a wall, and it depends on the window too. You can change that window up. I recommend always having 12 hours from the time you go to bed to the time you morning, and that's not so much of an intermittent fasting window. That's purely to allow your digestion to have a break, to allow your body to use that energy that it's putting in the breakdown of food and go to different parts of your organs and do some of the restorative things that it needs to do in other parts of your body besides digestion. Because we spend 80% of our energy in digestion in a given day when we're eating those excessive amounts of meal. How much exercise do you recommend? Again, very personal, and it depends on the type. I wouldn't recommend doing high intensity 7 days a week.
No.
I
need
like
to have
the
time to
balance.
repair. Yeah, absolutely. And often doing a combination of the cardio with the weight training with some flexibility work. But in general, you're wanting to get to your cardio about 3 times a week at least. 5 is better. 7 is too much. And the time that you do it, really we're finding that you don't have to do an hour and a half or whatever of cardio. You can do it in shorter times as long as you're getting some high intensity. Yeah. So there's a lot that's going on there in terms of the world of exercise, of what
and I
works.
think the key too is as you get older, it's really important to do muscle building, so strength training. A lot of people focus too much on cardio and not enough on building muscle and making your bones strong and some of the things that become more important as your hormones change. So really being intentional about body weight exercise, if you're working with a coach or someone that's helping you with weights and things like that.
And it is good to work with a trainer or a coach because they can really help guide you so you don't get injured, because that's one of the biggest things that happens. And then that will set you way back. So.
Yeah, and then adding in a flexibility component. So you want to have some sort of strength or conditioning training that's going to have you with the intensity, plus you've got the weight training, plus you have just like a Pilates or a yoga or something that's going to really help with the recovery and kind of that restful. And then of course you need that time where you're just going to do much of nothing and maybe just go for a walk.
Yeah, there you go. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Again, if you have more questions, feel free to write them in, and we'll answer them after the fact. And if you have ideas for the next Facebook Lives, we'd love to hear from you because we're always looking for new topics. So please send them on in. We look forward to hearing from everybody, and thanks again for joining us.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye, guys. See you next Monday.
Bye, guys. Good night.